Man, fuck this shit.
Hey man,
Hey, man.
what's going on? What's wrong?
Man, all these goddamn systems and currencies and grinding and chorecast, done with it.
Dude, it's not that bad, man. You just need to relax. Listen, you're gonna relax. Here, take this as well. And you're gonna play some Fury and you're gonna have some fun. It's simple. You see that there, over there?
Yeah.
Go smash
Just
it, man.
smash.
Go smash.
Just smash.
Yeah, go, little guy. Go,
Double
smash.
Pyrrha?
Yeah, go smash the Pyrrha.
Charge!
Ah, look at him go. They grow up so fast. Oh, that's my garrison. That's my garrison! Oh my goodness! And of course, we cannot start a guide without telling you to like and subscribe and click the bell thingy. Listen, it's been what? 20 years of YouTube? Not really, but let's just say 20 because it's a nice number to say. And this stuff still happens. We still really appreciate if you actually, hit the little bell thingy, because that's how you will get every other type of video that we do, because we don't do just guides. So it's actually really important. Plus, subscribing and liking and makes the video better. So, algorithms and okay, let's just go to the talents. You're bored already. Starting with the first talent row, because starting with the third is just silly. Sudden Death will be your ideal single target choice for raiding. It will be an additional occasional proc of Execute that further fuels your rage generation to get quicker rampages. Other than that, it's nothing you wouldn't have played with before. Alternatively, for AoE and Mythic Plus especially, take Fresh Meat. This baby was introduced or reworked into Shadowlands, and if this is the first time you are playing Fury this expansion, you might not have seen it, but now it has a unique new feature where you get a guaranteed enrage the first time you bloodthirst a target. And yes, if you swap targets to one you haven't bloodthirsted yet, you can smack it and get enraged again, and then target swap on and on for a sweet enrage uptime. And as a bonus, bloodthirst will passively have an extra 15% chance to trigger enraged. Moving forward, down, we have the mobility / survivability / crowd control row. Double time will be your goal in raids and usually most content. Having 2 charges of charge will make it so you can more easily get out of bad stuff, take bad stuff out of the raid, and get back on the boss ASAP. It will increase your rage generation as a byproduct, but most importantly, its purpose is to keep a high uptime on your target. In Mythic Plus scenarios, you want to go with Storm Bolt as one of the best single target stuns in the game, if not the best. It has a short 30-second cooldown and lasts for 4 seconds. There are plenty of mobs that need to be stunned, either to prevent chunking your tank, but more often than not to stop them from casting. Either way, having the option to do this every 30 seconds can be an asset to your group. On the level 30 row, Massacre will be your most used talent here. If you are doing Mythic Plus or any significant raid AoE or simply playing Venthyr in any scenario, then Massacre will be your thing. It makes your execute usable on targets below 35% HP as opposed to the standard 20%. This means more executes, more rage gen, and more rampages and more damage. The reason it's default when playing Venthyr should be fairly obvious, but if not, then condemn, baby! The ability is so strong that using it a few more times than normal out DPS is the alternative on this row, and that is Frenzy. This baby is really only good in single target raiding scenarios since it builds up its buff and maintains it so long as you rampage the same target over and over. I mean, you could play it in some AoE fights if you just make sure you rampage the same target all the time, but ideally bosses like Terragru, Guardian and so on will be where this will shine. And of course, only if you don't play Venthyr. Further down the road, you have another sustain / mobility / defensive row. In raids, you usually want Bounding Stride on high movement fights. This, on top of double time, should make your mobility issues a non-issue. Not only will your leap have a lower cooldown, but it will also give you a small burst of speed upon landing. If you can take advantage of these two things, then Bounding Stride is going to be your best choice here. If not, or if you need to be tankier, War Paint works in all other scenarios, especially in Mythic Plus. 10% reduced damage is nothing to scoff at, especially when you will always aim to play at maximizing your Enrage uptime. The level 40 talent row comes with, sadly, only one option, which is Cruelty. This is a very weird row of talents to discuss, since the other two options are weirdly out of place with either how good Fury scales with gear, aka you won't get a lot of crit to make Seethe work, and how unviable the encounter design is to make Frothing Berserker work. Outside the other two talents being awkwardly unviable, Cruelty will give you access to more Raging Blows, which will take the place of Whirlwinds in single target, which is sadly still a thing. And it also boosts the damage of Raging Blow. The next row, a toss-up. Dragon Roar is ideal in pure single target scenarios, maybe even 2 targets, since its damage falls off severely the more targets there are. This is a bursty option that can easily be snapshot into Enrage windows or any other procs or buffs you could have. Blade Storm is its alternative and the ideal AoE and Mythic Plus option. If you are running the Signets of Tormented Kings legendary, then Blade Storm will also be used in pure single target scenarios. In AoE, it has more damage than Roar, and since Dragon Roar doesn't proc the legendary just mentioned, Blade Storm is a no-brainer. And lastly, Anger Management is the way to go. It synergizes with pretty much all of the ways you want to play Fury. It makes Recklessness be around a 1-minute cooldown, which aligns with Blade Storm and Spear of Bastion. It gives you as a byproduct more casts of the spell, meaning more procs on Signet. It makes it so it aligns with more Dragon Roars overall, so more damage as well. It's hard to replace this one, be it either in single target or AoE. Reckless Abandon though comes close in single target, especially for stronger execute phases, but then again, Sylvanas, the end boss, doesn't have an execute phase. Siegebreaker gives you more burst overall and can also be cleaved with Whirlwind, and it actually works well with either the Kyrian or Nightfake Covenant legendaries. Realistically, any of these last two talents can be a tad better if you are not playing the Signet legendary or the Sinful Surge one, which both benefit from Anger Management's cooldown reduction imposed on Recklessness. Gearing your Fury can get a bit confusing at times, especially when the new patch comes with something like shards that can completely change your stat weight. The best way to know for sure what your stat priority should be is to sim. Sim yourself on websites like raidbots.com for actual optimal results. Otherwise, we can provide you with the basic stat priority as an informational piece. Strength will be at the top, probably regardless of what gear you have. Strength fuels your entire kit and stands at the base of your attack power. That means that aside rings, necks and trinkets, which don't have strength, you want the highest eye level gear possible. After strength, you want to take haste. Now, haste is pretty obvious, as why it's one of the best stats. Pretty much your rotation is like a speeding train with no brakes, and the faster it travels, the faster it smashes. I could have used an analogy that did not involve a potential horrific scene, but at least now you get it. Haste seems to trail off later in the game. You can probably still get easy haste until 30%-ish. After haste, you want mastery. Not much to say since Fury has a boring mastery that hardly requires any explanation, more damage during Enrage, which clearly works the best with haste, which has an indirect purpose of increasing your Enrage uptime. After that, you have crit and versatility. The thing with stats is that it's not always 100% accurate, and if you want 100%, you kind of have to be able to exploit it. AKA, if your DPS is suffering, it's more likely because you need more practice and chisel your rotation rather than stats, because outside eye level, going for the wrong stat is going to hardly make a noticeable difference. Don't get me wrong, the difference is there, and when you start to optimize everything, your performance will rise. But don't confuse the source of the problem, since we get these questions quite a bit. And just to drive the point home harder, these are my stat weights with 26% baseline haste. As you can see, pretty far off from the norm, but that's because once I get a new upgrade, these values will start to flip. and you can already notice the difference between secondary stats is very small. Since you will have 2 enchants on your weapons, cause, you know, 2, one will always be Celestial Guidance, while the other one depends on the content you do. In Raids you want Sinful Revelation, and in Mythic Plus you can go with Lightless Force for the max AoE potential. For your chest you can opt for Eternal Skirmish to start off and sim later on if you are interested in knowing if the alternative would be better. You don't need to sim for the heavy Desolate Armor kit though, cause stamina makes you chunkier, just do it. Next up, put some Eternal Strength on your gloves and a Fortified Avoidance on your cloak, which can actually be altered to anything you want, but we recommend Avoidance since it provides you with a 3% damage reduction from AoE abilities, which the raid has a lot of and most dungeons as well. Gems and Ring Enchants is the title of the section that I shouldn't say on the script. Finishing up with enchants, go with Tenet of Haste enchants for your rings and Quick Jewel Cluster gems for your sockets. You can and maybe should replace these with their mastery counterpart when you get to higher levels of haste, or any other secondary stat that you are interested in or sims the best for you. Use the Spectral Flask of Power always, since Strength will remain king for a while, and as such the Potion of Spectral Strength will be your best DPS potion. Finish it up with Shaded Sharpening Stones or Weight Stones for your weapons. No oil, no Shadow Core oil, bad Shadow Core, go away. Nobody loves you. Yeet! What a big boy Fury needs is protein to get jacked and ripped and stuffed like a roided turkey. But take your feasts, roasted aspects, with moderation, otherwise you too will be unable to wipe your ass. As always, play what you want, dude. Whether it's raiding or Mythic Plus, farming old raids, mount collecting, choose what you think looks and feels coolest. Right now, with the 9.1.5 changes on the horizon, it might not matter much apart from where you want to farm your renown. The differences the Covenants will make will only matter at the high end of play, where you pretty much nailed every corner of Fury and are looking to get the next boost in your damage. But I get you, I also like to min-max and put my best foot forward when joining a group. So let's see the options. If you are starting out your Furious journeys, and your go-to is raiding, Venthyr will be ideal. Condemned is incredibly strong in raids for a few reasons. You get to use it at the beginning of the fight when your group will most of the time use Bloodlust, so the value is pretty high, and also execute phases are usually the most important time to deal a lot of damage, hence Condemned will shine. But, and this is a big but, not that one. The less the boss will spend in those Condemned windows, the worse Venthyr will become. When your raid is super geared, the overall DPS will be higher, hence the boss HP will drop quicker, making the Condemned windows shorter. Not to mention, Sylvanas does not have an execute phase and she is the last boss of the raid. That's when you are super geared though. All of this is important since you will want to play with Venthyr Legendary that makes Condemned extend Recklessness, making the amount of time you can cast it even more important. Until then, feel free to play Nadia, building her up with the Dauntless Duelist as the important conduit to get. That, on top of Thrill Seeker, will make your single target shine and smack the boss silly. Not to mention that when you reach Renown 55, you get Fatal Flaw, granting you 20% crit or reverse, so it's pretty nice. For AoE scenarios, Theotar will be your boy, and build him with the Wasteland Proprietary Conduit node selected and working your way to party favors on Renown 54. Don't forget that Soothing Shade gives you that fat mastery buff only when staying in it. If you are just playing Mythic Plus or specifically aim at optimizing AoE, or maybe you want to raid and not have to worry about the decreasing value of Condemned, go with Night Fae with that juicy Ancient Aftershock. This has a lot of applications in AoE since by its nature the skill is an AoE ability. Nevertheless, in raids you will want to go with Nia and build her on the Nia's Tools Burst path as per usual, taking the potency slots as you would, with the deviate between endurance and finesse falling on to you. While for AoE, Corraine remains king with First Strike, Wild Hunt Tactics, and at Renown 57, Wild Hunt Stratagem. The amount of upfront burst is really good considering that's what you will be doing every pack in a dungeon as a Fury Warrior, assuming you would be taking Corraine there, where AoE is aplenty. And lastly, the potential endgame Covenant. Kyrian brings Spear of Bastion, a 1-minute cooldown damage burst and rage generator that roots all targets caught for its duration. The utility of it is incredible, and in AoE scenarios and Mythic Plus it will chunk. But what probably shines the most is the Elysian Might legendary that it comes with, which we will mention in a bit. Hands down, the best Soulbinds probably in the entire game is Mechanicos, once you reach Renown 57. And that is because of Effusive Anima Accelerator, which will make Spear of Bastion have a shorter cooldown based on how many targets you hit with it. That means more spears and more crit from your legendary. In single target, you will build Mechanicos on the 3 potency slot route, with the Soul Steel Clamps being the outlier, even though there is no DPS to be gained from it. For AoE, you switch to its neighbor, Hammer of Genesis, for the increased haste gain, while the rest of the Soulbind remains unchanged. As for the Conduits themselves, the potency at least, Depths of Insanity will still remain the best one out there, regardless of the build you will be playing. Ashen Juggernaut will be your next best thing if you are a Venthyr, with Piercing Verdict being the Kyrian choice and Destructive Reverberations for Night Fae warriors. And if you need a third potency conduit, take Vicious Contempt, which makes Bloodthirst have more execute damage. Not amazing, but can do work in some niche cases. Or Adaptive Armor Fragment, a generic potency conduit introduced this tier that buffs your strength when you are healed. The best endurance conduits will be Stalwart Guardian and Condensed Animosphere, the new option this tier, while the finesse options will always have Inspiring Presence first and maybe Safeguard if used properly for that damage reduction. There are a few new trinkets this patch that are turning some heads. First off, Overwhelming Power Crystal and Phial of Putrefaction are still solid options that can drop from M+ dungeons. And if you are raiding, one of the best trinkets are the Old Warrior's Soul and Titanic Ocular Gland. One drops from Sylvanas, pretty late into the raid, while the other from the very second boss of the raid. And of course, there are a lot of other trinkets that are very good. If you want to check your best options, websites like bloodmallet.com and herodamage.com will have a list of all the trinkets ranked for you to browse. You may or may not have heard of the controversial system added to the new raid in place of tier sets. The Domination Gear, yes, the best thing since Liquid Poop. The Domination Gear is now twice as powerful and twice as hard to get, where you can jump from minus DPS to a whopping holy shit, is this me who is doing all this damage or is it Ian? Get yours in a Sanctum of Domination near you. First off, you need to loot the items that can be socketed with the new shards that also drop in the raid. There are 3 types of shards: Unholy, Blood, and Frost. 3 shards of each, so a total of 9. And you can get up to 5 different armor pieces that can be socketed with these shards. And if you put 3 of one color in, you will get the set bonus, which right now, the Unholy one, Chaos Bane, is the best for Fury. The other 2 slots should be filled with a Shard of Beck from the Blood set and a Shard of Core from the Frost set. These individual shards, together with a Shard of Diz from the Unholy set, are the DPS shards that you still want outside raids as well, even if you don't have a set bonus. The set bonus only works in the raid and the Maw, and ideally you want to prioritize it above having the other 2 shards equipped, so keep that in mind. And because of this new gearing system, your head, shoulders, chest, wrists and gloves will be slots in which you will not want to craft a legendary, since it will replace a potential shard that can really boost your DPS. Still, you will still have to craft your legendary, so let's take them one at a time. Sinful Surge is the Venthyr legendary I mentioned earlier for raiding exclusively. Every time you condemn the target and you have Recklessness up, you will extend its duration by 2 seconds. With decent gear, you can essentially maintain Recklessness up 100% of the time you are in the condemned window. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Night Fae, on the other hand, has Nature's Fury, which increases the duration of your Aftershock and add a stacking dot to your enemies, mostly used in raids if you are a Night Fae. While Kyrians still want Elysian Might for both raids and dungeons, For that, Spear of Bastion bursts windows. It will add 25% crit damage while you remain within the AoE of the spear. Pretty good, especially when its cooldown will be reduced by Mechanicos. This will make crit as a stat even better when you choose your gear, so keep it in mind. And if you don't want to be bothered with single target this, AoE that, Covenant Y this, Covenant X that, simply craft your Signet of Tormented Kings, which works for all Covenants for all content pretty competitively, and you want to always talent Bladestorm when taking this Lego, since Dragon Roar does not proc its effect. This won't give you every little percentage of extra damage in all scenarios, but its versatility and viability regardless of how you build Fury Warrior is so good, it far outweighs those concerns. And in closing with the gear, you actually have an undisputed BIS weapon right now that drops from Kel'Thuzad. Jaethys, the Prison Blade, is exactly like your nipples. You want two of them ideally. The special effect of the weapon is that it can eat any weapon that it drops in Shadowlands, supposedly epic quality, and it boosts its own power. It has a total of 5 ranks, and if you have 2 of them, you want 1 at rank 5 and 1 at rank 4, since if they are of the same rank, their effects will conflict with each other. And yes, the bonus you get from them outweighs pure eye level stat sticks. But then again, if you want to be 100% sure, then you might want to sim. Likely, an LFR Jaethys won't be better than a 252 eye level Haste Mastery 2-hander. Depending on who you ask, there are at least 10 different openers based on build, Covenant, Legendary, Covenant and Legendary, Legendary and build, and well, you get the gist. So this time we will give you a set of specific rules to figure out what the best way to open for you is. You pretty much always start with a charge, get you in range of the target and get you your first rage to start with. Next up, your goal is to build towards your first rampage and then use your Covenant ability to benefit from the enrage buff. The difference is when you use Recklessness. If you don't run Signet, the legendary, use it with your charge to gain the double rage from charge. Otherwise, use it after you pop Rampage. While you are in single target, opener or not, and you are using the Signet legendary, you will want to cancel all Bladestorms since they are a DPS loss, in single target at least. Your purpose is to get the buff from Recklessness or Avatar, while Bladestorm will remain relevant only in AoE. Use the /cancel aura space Bladestorm line in your macro of both Recklessness and Bladestorm. That way, when you activate either of them, you can cancel your Bladestorms by pressing the macro a second time and retain all other benefits you'll be interested in. Although this opener method is longer, you at least get a better idea of how your mindset should be and what to look for. There are resources both in the Skyhole Discord and online written guides that go over all of the variations of the opener, which we will include as links down below. As for the actual priority, Recklessness on cooldown ideally. When you don't have Enrage or you have 90+ rage available, use Rampage. Press Condemn if you are a Venthyr, Ancient Aftershock if Night Fae, and you have Recklessness up, or Spear of Bastion if you are enraged and you are a Kyrian. If you are not a Venthyr, use Execute next in terms of priority. Bloodthirst to fish for Enrage, Raging Blow when at 2 charges, use Dragon Roar during Enrage, cast Bloodthirst on cooldown next on the list, use Raging Blow further down, and Whirlwind as a filler. The only difference in AoE scenarios in terms of priority is that you use Whirlwind to maintain 100% uptime on its cleave property. That and the fact that you will be running Bladestorm and not cancelling it anymore. In terms of priority, Bladestorm will be just below the value of Execute while making sure it's casted during the Enrage window. An example opener with a Signet legendary but without the min-maxing of the cancelled Bladestorm. Macro, you start as with all boss fights by charging towards the boss, Bloodthirst, and building towards your first rampage with Raging Blows, Whirlwinds, Bloodthirsts, and all of that good jazz. Then you rampage for the first time and go into Recklessness quick, which will build up your rage for the next rampage. If not, you build it manually and then rampage again, and then you use your Covenant ability, rampage again, Bladestorm. And then once your Bladestorm is over, you will rampage again and continue with the normal priority, consuming all the procs and all that good stuff. A special thank you to Vil from Limit for helping us understand a little bit more about Fury and making sure that our research was on point. Dude, you rock, and you can catch him and a lot of other big Fury boys on our Fury podcast, where we talk 1 hour about all the Fury goodness coming into 9.1, and that's something that you might be interested in. And of course, a special thank you to the Skyhole Discord community for having all of the resources compiled, the Icy Veins guide, the Wowhead guide for Fury Warrior, if you want to go more in depth about the spec and figure things out that we might not have mentioned, because there are a lot of intricacies. And of course, you can also check method.gg website. They have some pretty cool guides there as well that should pretty much satisfy all of your Fury needs. Thank you to the Patreons for supporting our content in this time of change. You will see changes, and they're gonna be pretty good. Thank you for the support, everybody. There's a lot of cool stuff that's in store that we have planned to show you guys. It's gonna be awesome. And if you, dear viewer, also want to support us a little bit more, maybe you like our content, maybe you like our vibe, our stuff, and you want to see more of this, want to make more of this magic happen, the link to our Patreon page is down below. You can check it out. Maybe it's for you. Maybe you'll find some things that you like. Thank you, everybody, for watching the video, and see you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.